So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our viewers everywhere. Today, we're going to be talking with Nathan McGee. I've known him for about a year now, and I think every time I meet him at any conference or we chat on LinkedIn, it's always a great experience because he's been in the industry from the engineering side, the startup side, to the corporate side, and now to corporate startup side. I think WorldSense is more of a
Yeah,
corporate startup, a growing company,
yeah,
and he's led business development and the engineering part. So it's a pleasure to have Nate with us. His official work is now he leads the partnership and global alliances for world sensing. I think I got that right.
yeah,
And
yeah,
perfect. And I think he's going to give us a lot of insights. We're going to focus on his experiences, his time with Sensormetrics, how he moved to Bentley, his time before that, and also now at World Sensing, what they're doing, because I think they're one of the greatest companies when it comes to LoRa, and they've really, I have a lot of respect for what they've done in the industry, and I think it'll be great to even share his view of the story because he's just been there for recent times. So I
yeah.
think it'll be very cool to dive into the world of IoT software, data logger sensors today. So thank you for being here.
No, I appreciate that introduction, and thank you for having me.
Perfect. So Nate, I think I've talked a lot about your journey and hyped it up. But do you want to maybe start like from your days at Foundry to Sensormetrics to Bentley to now World
Yeah,
Sensing? Like, take your time. We'll go with the flow. I think it's a very cool story to share with the world.
sounds good. Yeah. I guess to start with Foundry engineering days, right? We were literally three guys in a garage, operating out of Taos, New Mexico, which is a beautiful city if you ever go visit. But what we were doing is we were building these complex solutions for monitoring jobs, construction, mining, whatever. But it was always bespoke. Every single project required this specific third party cellular modem, this specific third party photovoltaic panel, and everything else. It was a non-scalable approach, right? So we knew we wanted to grow, and we knew that that approach wasn't feasible. So we kind of simultaneously started to spin up Sensemetrics. Sensemetrics was almost a pivot from Foundry, right?
Yeah.
Where we wanted to take a more consumer level approach to instrumentation and monitoring. And we wanted it to be very much like Apple, sexy, sleek, easy to use, simple, just goes with your day-to-day workflow for an engineer or a technician in the O&M field. So that's what we did. We built the Thread device, right? We developed Sensemetric software, and we tried to introduce it to the market. At the beginning, it was a heavy focus in mining because that's where a lot of our backgrounds came from originally. But yeah, we just paved the or pounded the pavement and continued to push that, and it was an interesting, I guess, exercise because the mining industry notoriously
Yeah.
moves, this is just my opinion, but notoriously moves slower
It's very
than
slow.
other. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very
It's too
slow.
slow.
So if that's your demographic, you have to be prepared to just get small wins over time as you build that kind of trust in the industry. So it took some time for sure. It took a lot of pilots, trials, kind of proving ground scenarios before we really picked up steam. And then once you start getting a few of those bigger logos, right? The Newmonts, the Rio Tintos, etc., you've earned that trust in the industry. It became a lot easier. But yeah, we went from again those three, four guys in a garage to 40, 50 person company. Um,
Wow.
really had a lot of success, started to get more familiar globally, but we realized we had hit a point where we were growing both from personnel, both from technology standpoint, but we wanted to go faster, and we knew that we wouldn't have the resources in time, just with the organic growth that we were seeing to do a lot of the things that we wanted to do. So we started having conversations about acquisitions, mergers, what have you. And that's when Bentley Systems acquired Sensemetrics about 2.5, 3 years ago now. And that was really a turning point for us because you can imagine 40 people company to the resources you get with a 5,000 person company,
Yeah.
it's night and day. So we were able to kind of really sink some resources in, start to marry data collection, the what I'll call the basics of operations and maintenance or instrumentation and monitoring, whatever, marry that into more initiatives, different verticals. Is it digital twins? Are we marrying it with a point cloud? Do we have a LiDAR solution? Like just bringing everything together instead of keeping things isolated. So that was a really fun time. That was a fun transition for I think a lot of the team members to have that backing, get away from the stresses of a startup and just be able to focus on cool stuff. So yeah, that was the Bentley days. For me personally, I rode that out for a couple of years until I think everything was kind of set in place and the motions were put in. And then I decided to come over to World Sensing. I realized in my heart I'm a hardware guy, and I needed to focus on that. So World Sensing, as most people know, make a ton of different connectivity solutions, sensors, what have you, and it just felt right for me to follow in that direction.
It's a pretty cool story, right? Like you went from garage to growth to corporate and now back to growth, and the hardware vibe is there. And I think in our industry, there's so many startups coming up, especially when it comes to
Yeah.
data logging and new types of sensors and even software. Like even for us at Encardio, Procure is a startup spin up, and we're coming up with a bunch more. And I think the way you work is very different, and I think you guys did achieve that Apple dream for our industry with sensor metrics because it did become the standard. And till date, I think the thread is after maybe the Campbell or the ESDL 30 is one of the best data loggers in the market. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's a very inspiring story, and I think I want to dive in a bit into like the differences. So like you've done the
Okay.
garage life and the corporate life. So what were like the key differences in terms of culture, management, the ability to be agile, the ability to innovate? Like what were
Yeah.
those key differences?
Yeah, I mean there are quite a few. I think agile is the first one that comes to mind, right? When you're just a truly a startup, you have to be dynamic. You have to be flexible. The best startups have always pivoted, right? It always seems like the best ones pivoted somewhere, and really found their niche and went with it. With a larger company, a corporate structured company, you of course want to be innovative, right? You want to stay at the cutting edge. You have the resources to fund that R&D initiative, but you also have your operating parameters, right? It's
Yeah,
a matter of how far outside of the box are we going to get if we're in a corporate strategy to who cares? We don't have a box. We're just doing whatever we can to survive from a startup strategy. So that was a big one. I think culturally, it's also night and day because when you're especially like I'll say 20 people or less in a company, everybody's wearing multiple hats. Everybody is aware of what the other person is doing, right? So
yeah,
it feels like at every step, is it if it's marketing, if it's R&D, if it's sales, everybody is involved with everything. With, of course, corporate, that's not the case. You kind of have like your operating procedures, everyone has theirs. Maybe you come together every once in a while to get to the final solution, but it's just a different approach altogether. So those are the big two in my head when I think about it,
yeah.
is just the agility, uh, and then just the kind of being in touch with every aspect of the company. Those are the two big ones for sure.
So it does like break up things into silos, and it is a risk-taking ability of corporates. Like, do
Yeah.
you really want to take that risk and try something
It's
new?
it's it's impossible not to silo, right?
Yeah,
It just once you get so
yeah.
big, it's impossible
It's
not
tough.
to.
Yeah.
And
It's
with the
very
corp
tough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And
yeah,
with the risk, exactly. Like every day is a risk at a startup. It's
yeah,
just how far do you want to go with a corporate structure? Everything's more calculated. So yeah, that's definitely a
yeah. I think
difference.
that's a very cool way to put it because I think for a lot of our viewers, like especially the young ones, it's a big decision, right? Like when you get out of college, do you want to get into the startup or do you want to get into the corporate culture on the consulting side, or do you want to get into maybe a company that's established like Autodesk or Bentley or in the
Yeah.
software side or a Campbell, or do you want to go to World Sensing or do you want to go to Procure, like something like that. So I think
Yeah.
it's a very important decision, and until you experience it, you don't know. So like luckily we have that, like we can experience it, but it's also cool to like sometimes get the voices of people who've been in that place to even like shape your decisions a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, even before Foundry days for me, I worked for Rio Tinto, the second largest
Yeah.
mining company in the world, and I moved to Taos, New Mexico. Never been there before to join a three-person company. Was that a huge risk? Yes, it was massive.
Yes.
Did it work out for me? Yes, I think so. But it's not made for everybody. As you said,
Yeah.
there's tiny startups, there's middle size, and if you just want a nice job to be in a field of engineering where you kind of just have a day to day that's, I'll say, a little more calm, great. Go to a larger company like a Bentley or something where you can make an impact, but in a more structured way, right? It just
Yeah.
depends on everybody's prerogative.
Yeah. I think we're aligned there. And I think
Yeah.
there's one point that's like stuck in my head that I want to bring out. Is like, what made you move from Rio to into the Foundry? What was the motivation there?
There was two main motivators. For one, where I lived, or where I was at working was US Borax mine site, which loved the mine site, loved the people, didn't really love the location.
Yeah.
Working and living in the Mojave Desert is not high on my list of regions to live. So that was number one. And number two, I knew early on that I
Yeah.
wanted to do cool stuff quickly. I wanted to do
Yeah.
cool stuff. And as an entry level engineer at a massive company like that, the opportunities to do a lot of cool stuff just weren't readily available to me. So
Yeah.
thought, I'm young, let's make a jump. And that's what I did.
And that got you to Sensometrics and now where you are.
Exactly.
That's yeah. So it did work out, probably taking that
Yeah,
risk.
I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah. So talking about cool stuff, I think there's a lot of technologies today that we're picking up from different fields and bringing into our field. And your focus has been on software, but I think software is all now coming into integrations and machine learning and AI. And hardware, there's this whole geospatial world. But I think your experience is a lot in like geotech and maybe now a bit of GNSS because that's popping up a lot for monitoring. But
Yeah.
the way uh, I see like data loggers today, there's two like areas. One is wireless and one is wired high speed because you need both.
Mhm.
Like you can't do without the dynamic strain gauges and they cannot work on batteries and you do not want cables when you need low static readings. So of course wireless solutions come in. And then of
Yeah.
course you have the good old vibrating wire sensors and you have the good old MEMS sensors. And now you're getting a bit of like different types of sensors coming in, especially with LoRa or with Zigbee or with BLE coming up as technologies. So how have you seen these evolve out of all these technologies? I think I've given a pretty decent summary.
Yeah.
What would like the 3 to 4 wow factors that you felt like, you know what, can impact my life as an engineer and are actually solving the customer's need? And what are like the two, three that you see coming that would be a wow?
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that is a lot. That's
Yeah,
quite
we
vague.
can break it up. We'll break it up.
Yeah, I can take a lot of
Yeah,
answers there.
yeah,
The first one that comes to mind, and it seems relatively simple, right? But is the accessibility of satellite communications. Of
yeah,
course, a lot of projects that you and I both worked on are very remote, and the infrastructure
yes,
just isn't there. And as recent as 5, especially 10 years ago, satellite communications was few and far between and very, very expensive. And just in the past couple of years, we've seen that with Tesla and everything else. Of course, things are just cheaper, easier to get a hold of, more simplistic in the setup and everything else. So that's been a huge one. That's been a huge one,
yes,
is it just reduces the resources required to build infrastructure. Just put in a little antenna, you've got connectivity. That's a big one. I think another one that has really grown is just, I guess, chip development, right? At the hardware
Yes.
level, things are getting smaller, they're getting cheaper. You can make them faster. With wireless communications, you can stream further. You can stream longer with the advancements in battery technology. You can run for longer. Advancements of photovoltaic, you can have smaller and smaller panels. All of those kind of collectively are making my world specifically very interesting
Yeah.
because the 5, 10 years ago, of these big ass boxes with these giant car batteries and everything else primarily aren't necessary anymore. Like you
Yeah.
can run things, super small batteries, super small solar panels, very powerful antennas and wireless comms, radios, whatever. So that's been super cool to see. That's been cool to see kind of the industry just change over time. Um, in terms of like where I see things going or getting I'm getting excited about, there's two. And the first one I'll bring up is just as you said, the marriage of different technologies coming together. I have been a big proponent for a number of years now that IoT, INM, what have you, is just one small piece of the much larger pie. I don't care if it's
Yes.
mining, I don't care if it's construction. There are
Yeah.
like three generic phases. There's design, implementation, O&M. And I think IoT fits a role in there holistically with the field investigation, with the LiDAR drone-based data with the reporting and analysis that goes in, like all of this is
Yeah.
coming together. The interoperability is critical to the industry, and you can really see the companies that are excelling in our industry are the ones that are continuing to be open to partnerships, open to connections, integrations, what have you. So it's not really a technology per se, but it's just a way that the industry's headed
Yeah.
that I think is really cool. Looking further, I was just at a conference the past 2 days, and even I was shocked. I know that AI is, of course, going to change the world. I was shocked how prevalent it was in every single conversation, every single one.
Yes.
I can't even describe what or how AI will change the instrumentation and monitoring world, but I know it's going to be significant, right? The
Yes.
more that we can receive real-time data, be it static, be it dynamic, whatever it is, the more that we can receive that data and rerun models, regender new analysis without human intervention, where now the human only has to do a little bit of like review, checkbox. Yes, this is good. Let's move forward. I think it's going to make people's lives so much easier. I'm struggling to put my thumb onto where and
Yeah.
how, but I know it's coming. I know it's coming.
Yeah. And I feel you on the AI wave because, I mean, it's for the first time we're building technology that resembles intelligence. And that's
Exactly.
something that made humans unique. And today it's Anthropic, Meta, OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, and Tesla with XAI that are
Yeah.
basically forming these foundation models backed by NVIDIA, probably. And it's these guys that are shaping industries. But what they do in the industries today will impact our industry in a
Yeah.
way that it's a very slow moving industry. Like you said, mining is maybe 100 years behind, even construction is 20 years behind and
Yeah.
even the
Yeah.
way our businesses run. So I think even the way we work day to day, even the way our marketing will work, sales will work, installations will work. Like we were just discussing with our services team that, okay, at the We Robot event, Optimus was maybe like human control, but Spot is that. But 5 years down the line, are you going to send a human into a underground mine or into a
Yeah.
tunnel, or will you send Spot or Optimus controlled by you with a laser scanner who can
Yeah.
work 24/7? Like it's going to impact us, and I don't think we're ready for it. And
No, yeah, we're not. We're definitely not
what
ready
now?
for it.
And we don't even know what's going to happen. Like today, you have Claude come out with computer use, and then tomorrow you have OpenAI come up with automating graphs, and then what happens to softwares, right?
Yeah.
Like what
Yeah.
happens to SaaS? What happens
Yeah.
to even I think that's why luckily hardware will always be important because I mean the machine learning on the hardware will keep on improving it, help us process data. But uh, if we don't look at synthetic data generation and we look at real data generation, in our field, the data from the sensors is critical. And
Yeah.
luckily, we're both in hardware core companies as well as software that if software gets eaten up by artificial intelligence, it'll still need to be powered by the sensors and the data loggers, with whatever type of sensor or data loggers they are to transmit that data to the
Yeah.
software. So I think until that gets hit, we have a lot of innovation we can do.
I mean, there's always going to be that's always the concern, right? Like when we first released in the 30s and 40s when we had like operations mechanical lines, right? Building cars,
Yeah,
building whatever. People thought, "Oh, we're going to lose all these jobs." New jobs
came up.
appear. They're generated. We don't know what they are yet, but
Yeah,
they will exist. So as long as you keep an open mind, I think technology, for the most part, has been positive as it grows.
yeah,
So I think it'll be a fun ride for sure.
exactly. And we live with the growth mindset now. And you
Yeah,
have to,
yeah,
I mean, like you said, like you have to think out of the box and move out of silos. So I
yeah.
think, yeah, talking about moving out of boxes, silos, partnerships. I think one thing that you're now doing is building partnerships and alliances. And you did mention the importance of companies coming together. And I see in our industry we do, right? Like today with most data loggers, you can integrate any sensor, and with most sensors, you can, and with most software, they're all agnostic. And like we as a group work with many, many companies. You guys work with many, many companies. But beyond that commercial part, like how do you see collaboration in the industry coming up into technology development and like where do you see that side of partnerships going as a
Uh,
community?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That is tough to say. I know that the way that I've always tried to approach it is I try to view everybody as a possible partner.
Yeah,
I know some people might try to view one company comparing another and say, "Oh, those are immediately competitors." Sure, a lot of our industry isn't that big. We're going to have overlap on
yeah,
some things. That's just nature. That's playing the game. That's okay. I think there is still opportunity to work with different companies within this industry, even though they have some competitive overlap and be able to help our end clients, right? At the end of the day, we're going to share a ton of customers, accounts, clients, organizations, whatever. And there's no reason that we can't both deliver a collective solution that in the end makes their life easier. So that's the way I've approached it. I know kind of industry wide, I've seen different companies take different approaches, right? Some companies have taken a complete isolation approach where this is our environment and we're going to play in here. And if you want to play, you gotta stick within the environment. And I've seen other ones, as you said, that are just completely wide open. Um, I like to lean to the wide open side just because I think it allows for more opportunities than less. But it's tough. It's tough. You have to play with it. The other thing is just with global companies, um, it's the nuances of where they're based, right?
yeah.
Some regions are going to be more susceptible to working with, I'll say, exterior or third party non-regional companies, while other ones want to be very isolated. So you just have to play the game and see where it gets you.
Yeah. And I think I'm also aligned on that openness because I mean in terms of like our protocols, like the way our industry is limited, are also very limited. APIs, MQTT, FTP, SFTP,
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
vibrating my Modbus SDI12 analog bits, like six, seven
yeah.
sensors. And like there's no standardization. Like when
Oh,
we
God, no,
like
no.
on Procure, we work with everyone. We have like data, even though it's an Encode company of like 20 companies' data, and we have to build a parser for all of it. Like I feel
Yeah.
bad for our back-end engineers because come on, like and I'm a big promoter for standardization. Like, of course, competition is healthy. Of course, you're gonna some people do. Everyone is good at not good at everything. And I think the point that
Exactly.
you raised that at the end of the day, the clients are end game, but we're also in an industry where it's not only about the client, but it's about the downstream of the dam. It's about the area around the bridge, and it's about the people living in the buildings where the metro line is going. And
Yep.
I think
Yep.
as a community, like we have all these associations that people go meet, but we don't have like that thing, like, you know what, let's build this, let's package it, and let's do it. Because, I mean, of course, it's very tough to do it, but for AI, for example, like none of us know where it's going.
Yeah.
Beyond like who's going to build the best AI reporting or who's going to build the best machine learning data processing, I think AI and ethics comes in. AI
Yeah.
and how, because that's something that's going to be common to all of us. And as an industry, I think maybe that, I don't know, like someone somewhere through this podcast, or even us, like if we can take out some time, could maybe even think of like, you know, let's build like a forum, like what they have in the tech industry. Like you see, okay, Musk and Sam Altman maybe don't talk that much anymore, but you do see Meta, Google, etc. like talk,
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
together,
Yeah.
find solutions together. And I think that's why they grow so big. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very interesting, maybe for some people, it's very like I don't want to do this. I'm only making sensors. I'm only growing my own way, or I'm only
Yeah.
making laser scanners. But I think the partnerships is the way to go. And I
Well,
think that's what yeah,
You
I
you
got,
you implied something very important. In our industry, again, 90% of the time, what we're doing is a CYA, right? We're ensuring that something isn't moving, we're ensuring that people are safe. But there are times where projects are that level of critical that we are protecting lives. And I don't want to stand on a soapbox and say that I'm some lifesaver
yeah,
hero, because I'm not. But there are times where we are truly keeping humans alive. And when you think about it from that context, like you said, we're making sure a dam doesn't fail and wipes out a town. We're making sure a bridge doesn't fail and causes issues everywhere. I mean, those are important things to focus on. And when you think from that mindset, it's a lot easier to partner than if you
yeah,
think of, oh, I'm just trying to make the next buck. It's just not as powerful. So it's one thing to definitely think of.
yeah. I think our industry will mature. It's still a very young industry. I feel like
It
there's
is.
giants, and I feel like technology today is enabling people to build. And Dr. Joel was telling me this like once he came, and he's like, you know what? We don't need to build the next battery. We don't need to build anything. We're cooks. We take everything from every industry that's good, put it in a good package, and sell it. And I was like,
That's a
yeah,
good
that's
way.
true.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
cooks. And
Yeah,
that's what even Apple did with the iPod, right? Like they
yeah.
combine different technologies, package it, boom, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think the better we cook, the cooler it is. Yeah. So I think talking about technologies and software, like how do you see the geospatial and geodetic world coming to, sorry, geodetic and geotechnical world coming together? Like, 'cause it,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, that question hits close to home because that is a something that I've been pushing pretty heavily with world sensing in general, right? World sensing historically has been very, very geotechnical focused and not too much focused in the geodetic geospatial world. So I've been trying to push those two together. But in my opinion, even removing world sensing from the conversation, there is so much overlap there. There is a need for both. I think they can symbiotically live together on the same project, on the same deliverable, what have you. I mean, people have been using survey and total stations for years and years and years and years and years, and they're a great tool. But they have their downsides, and normally some sort of geotechnical solution can fill those voids. And
yeah,
it goes the other way as well. And that's where I hope more people go. The problem that I see, or the hurdle, I think is a better way to describe it, is that individuals that have been experts in the geospatial, geodetic world, they know that backwards and forwards. They know how to operate a toll
yeah,
station. They understand a Prism network. They understand GNSS solutions, post-process, everything else. On the other side, the geotechnical engineers and technicians, they know how a crack meter works. They know an IPI, and it seems like it's too big of a gap for some individuals to jump, just because it might be so foreign to them. And in reality, we're working on the same projects. We got the same clients. We got the
Yeah.
same issues. We need to marry the two together. And that's what I've been trying to do just with partners, with possible clients, whatever, is getting them to understand that both are critical to a
Yeah.
successful monitoring plan.
Yeah.
Both are critical.
Yeah.
And the further we push that thought process, I think the better off all of us will be.
Yep, and I think we're aligned that you and I mentioned Amit in my last podcast as well, but like this is what he's done, right? Like the reason why we're successful or he's successful with this team that he takes up serving and monitoring jobs together. And he's got a team now that does both. And I think
Yeah,
even Sixth Sense does that pretty well. They do total stations and they do monitoring. And that's why I feel like both of us are growing at that level. And today, from the technology standpoint as well, like you said, world sensing today, you guys have a GNSS readout. We're making some GNSS, and a lot of companies like can really build processing tools for both. And you have
hmm
the softwares that visualize both. You have it in the iTwin, you have it in Procure, you have it to some level in Maxwell as well, like
Yeah,
the three main ones. And like it is coming together, but I think it's like something that's not really talked about, but like people who are at the intersection are seeing it. So I'm very
yeah,
curious to see like how from beyond the services part or the software part, we really get into the hardware part of like people building it together. Like how do you like you have that displacement till like a lot of people have that node. Like that's
yeah,
kinda in the middle, but like how do you take
yeah,
that three steps forward and combine it is like that'll be also something really cool, and that'll make the life of even projects easier because settlement, I mean, total station, Prism, XYZ, GNSS, XYZ, borehole extensometer Z mostly, and tail X and Y. It's
yeah,
just two
yeah,
different ways to look at it at different points of the project. Of course, different methodologies, but common points, common end goal. How do you do it?
yeah,
And I remember at Intergeo, there was you were there. There's so many cool like companies there, like doing stuff in geospatial. And I
yeah.
feel like that connect like will really make a big change.
It will. It will. I agree. There was a lot of cool tech that I had just seen for the first time at Energeo, but it's start. I think we're starting to see that, right? I've always viewed GNSS. I mean, I'm very familiar with the technology. Outside looking in, people view it as a black box, possibly confusing, difficult to configure, difficult to maintain. You need a very select expertise to operate it. And I'm seeing multiple companies realize that that doesn't need to be the case anymore. You don't need to be these high level experts to run a total station, to run a GNSS. So kind of reducing that concern that an individual might have of this is too hard or I'm not familiar with it, I'm not going to use it. That's going to be one of the first steps to making people realize that they're basically the same. I mean, they should be used the same simultaneously, etc.
Yep. And I think it's also the technologies are maturing. It's becoming cheaper.
Yeah,
Like we saw, I mean, I don't know, I noticed so many companies from China doing the same thing as the big three. And you have SLAM coming in with lasers, GNSS is coming into monitoring beyond
yeah,
surveying, and you have Baidu, GLONASS, GPS, Galileo. India is launching its satellites. It's becoming more accessible. So yeah, it'll
yeah,
be very, very interesting to see like the progression with time. Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
So we've talked about your journey. We've talked about a lot of technology, software. We talked about partnerships and alliances of companies and technologies and fields. So it's been very
Mhm.
interesting so far, but I think let's take it now back from the world of the industry to Nate. So what were some of like the challenges you faced, your biggest lessons that you've learned being in this field for so long, whether it's been in the startup or corporate world?
Challenges I faced. One of the bigger challenges, I kind of already referenced it, was just getting the industry to to kind of accept new technology, right? And I think that that's going to be standard for almost any industry. Campbell Sigh was it. I mean, it was the bee's knees. You could do whatever you wanted. It was quite custom and cumbersome, but it could do everything. And it was so much work, initiative, whatever, to convince technicians, engineers, and everything else that there were better ways to do it, or different ways to do it, I should say. And what I learned from that was just like that perseverance really is important.
Yeah.
If you're trying to redirect or re-steer the industry, you have to just stay on it and continue to show the value and the vision as to what you're trying to accomplish. And over time, more and more people will see that and will come around to it. But that was one for sure is that you just have to be perseverant to actually get what you want sometimes. That was a huge one. Not really startup or corporate or otherwise. It's
Yeah.
just in general, that's something that people need to realize for sure.
It's like trying to win your dream girl. You gotta pursue, but not too much.
Exactly.
That's like
Yeah,
sales and
exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
was
but not
talking to
too
my
much.
cousin. I like sales and dating's pretty much the same thing. You gotta woo the
It,
client, but you also gotta get the cards right.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Timing's key. Yeah, yeah. It's very
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it's also, yeah, I like the fact like Campbell's still huge, but like today no one wants to program a data logo. I mean, the enthusiasts
yeah,
do, but our generation was so lazy. We want to press buttons or we want to tell ChatGPT what's the best way
yeah,
to write this email, So like, yeah.
yeah,
And yeah, you gotta pursue, you gotta convince, you gotta share. Yeah. Yeah. So I think to
yeah, yeah.
close, this is the standard question on Groundbreakers, but what's like the advice you would give to young civil engineers entering the world of maybe mining in your case, or the world of monitoring, or even the world of just construction? Like, what would you say to look out for, to do, just as your three, four, 5 words of wisdom?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would say find something that you truly enjoy. Um, I don't like the phrase what is it? Work on something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. That's not true because we still got to show up. We still got to like follow a schedule. We
I
still got
think
to
we
send
work
those damn
more.
emails. So exactly. Exactly. But it's super it's awesome to be able to work on something that you're passionate about. And realize soon that if you're not passionate or if you don't like your spot, your company, your projects, whatever it is, make a change. Don't be afraid to ask your within the company that you sign on with, hey, I'm not liking this or whatever. But don't be stale. Don't get stagnant. Always be looking for the next cool thing. Make sure that you're happy and then everything else just falls into place.
But that's a great way to put it. Don't
Yeah.
like do what you love, so you're gonna chill. You're always gonna work and just do what you want to do. But
Yeah.
also like do it in the right way. Like if you're not enjoying something, speak up. Because I do feel
Yeah.
like sometimes we just don't say stuff because it's convenient. And I think, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, and
Exactly.
yep. So I think that's a great way to end the episode. And Nate, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to talk to you again, share your experience. I think hopefully people will really enjoy this conversation because we dove into stuff that we normally don't dive into in conversations in the industry. Like, what's AI gonna do? Should
Yeah.
geospatial and geotechnical be the next big integration? There's so many people playing the game, and I think together as an industry, we need to play it together and
Yeah.
win the game for our customers and clients and our communities, and not only for ourselves. I think that's my
Yeah.
biggest takeaway. So
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you
No,
so much for your time.
I agree. This was super fun. This was super fun. So thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
thank you.